This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us is Paul Buchheit. He is the contributing writer for Alternet, author of the new book, Disposable Americans, an adjunct professor at DePaul University, an advocate for social and economic justice. His website, youdeservefacts.org. And you can tweet him at @UsAgainstGreed. Paul, welcome to the program, or welcome back to the program.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Great having you with us. You have been writing about our healthcare system condemning thousands of Americans to an early death. In fact, that's the title of one of your recent Alternet pieces. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, that's one of the things I get into in my book, which is Disposable Americans. One, it really talks about kids, the elderly, women, workers, minorities, young adults, soldiers, and elderly. A section of my book gets into healthcare for the elderly and how they really, it's sort of a form of terrorism. I refer to it in my writing because terrorism is pretty much defined as an intentional means of disposing of people, and that's what happens with what's happening with our health
to some political end, typically. So
yes,
yeah. So the title of your book is Disposable Americans. At what point in time did Americans become disposable, or has this been with us since the beginning? Is this just the modern day extension of what started out as slavery?
Well, that's an interesting question. Let me mention first that that title. I've had a number of people say to me, Paul, that's perfect timing for a title like that, Disposable Americans. But my answer now is I'd rather sell 0 books and have President Sanders in office. It's nice to have a book that's timely, but it's a shame that it has to be that way. But to answer your question, the book gets into the past and the present and the personal, so it does reach into the past, the time of slavery and the time of war and the time of terrible working conditions for kids and women, so it touches upon our, I guess the answer is that it's always been this way, and hopefully we all hope it'll change, but it just doesn't seem. It seems like the whole neoliberal concept is basically saying that they don't care about half of America or more, 2/3 of America.
Yeah, yeah. We just put a man on the Supreme Court who, when he was being questioned by Congress, refused to say that he thought that child labor laws were constitutional. He acknowledged that they were, settled law, as among other things, but refused to take the simple position that this was the right thing. I'm sure you're familiar with the court in the 20s and the 30s, and the battles that Franklin Roosevelt had that kind of resolved themselves in 37 when he threatened to change the makeup of the court. Do you see us revisiting that era? Well,
it's certainly true that I was watching, and I'm sure you also saw Al Franken when he was questioning Gorsuch about the truck driver that would have died if he didn't use a common sense or make a common sense decision and get the heck out of there and find warmth, And Gorsuch, right. It's like he's so keyed into the legality of things that we lose common sense, and we're seeing that all throughout the administration now. That with of course with climate denial and Steve Mnuchin just said, and this is closely related to my book about jobs. he said, "Oh, don't worry about the robots. It'll be 50 or 100 years before they have an impact." I mean, it's like there's no common sense thinking right now. It's like it's all based on law and changing the rules to make things easier for the
I think
rich.
virtually all of them were born rich. I don't think there's a single person in his cabinet, and certainly not Gorsuch, who ever had to stand in an unemployment line, who ever had to as I remember doing when I was 6 years old, go to we called it the cheese store, you know, the surplus food store, because my dad, you know, couldn't get a decent job at the time. He was selling encyclopedias door to door and just wasn't making it. You know, the following year, he finally got a good union job and spent 40 years as a tool and die maker, which, you know, threw us into the middle class. But I don't think that anybody in that cabinet, and frankly, I don't think anybody in the Republican Party has ever had that experience, or at least at the elected level. There seems to be a complete lack of empathy for the experience that most Americans have had.
Yes, I'm glad you used the word empathy. That's one of the areas that I'm very interested in. I've studied all the research about how the richer you get, the less empathy you have, the less you're able to connect. And that's certainly true in Congress, where and the cabinet, if you add up all their money, it's about equal to 85% of all the counties in America. I mean, it's just incredible. And they clearly, I mean, this is common sense if you think about it. If you're in Congress and you're dealing with lobbyists and you're being wined and dined every day, of course you want to help those people out, and you relate to them, and you sort of lose sight of real Americans. And by real America, I'm talking about, it's more than half. I mean, last year, for example, the 1% was everybody talks about income, but it seems to me that wealth is a better barometer of what's happening in this country. And last year, only the 1% gained in wealth. Everybody else went backwards. So it's but Congress and the cabinet, they don't relate to people like this.
Yeah, it seems to me that this got really bad. I mean, I've been sort of watching politics. My father was very political, and so I grew up, I think, you know, aware of politics in the 1950s and early 60s, and it really seems like we went nuts with the Reagan administration. That seems like a major inflection point. That was the point at which the beginning of the destruction of the middle class and the beginning of the rise of a genuine oligarchy started. Does your analysis comport with that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, the Chicago boys, Milton Friedman, and then that ridiculous belief based on economist Arthur Laffer about how, you know, it's like the neoliberals or the people in the Reagan era were just waiting for somebody to make this claim that if you cut my taxes, everybody's going to benefit. And it's so, yes, the answer is starting with Reagan or just before, things went, the country reversed itself. And it's incredible to me that after almost 40 years, there's still denial about that, you know, that idea that cutting taxes is going to benefit everybody.
Well, and there's absolutely no discussion in the media about the failure of this bizarre pseudo-libertarian ideology or Ayn Rand or any of this kind of stuff. Paul, we're running out of time here. We're talking with Paul Buchheit. He is the author of a new book, Disposable Americans. Paul, what's in a nutshell? What solutions do you offer, or what do you have optimism?
Well, yes, I guess we have to, right? You know, I certainly with the tremendous surge in alternative energy, I mean, that has to lead us into a happier path in the future. And then my book discusses the guaranteed income. You know, how basically how when all these right-leaning people say, "Well, I did it myself," you know, I'm a self-made man, usually men, and you know, individualism. if you really think about it, and we people and progressives have thought about this, everything started with people working together. It's our tax money, our government institutions, DARPA, National Institutes of Health, everything in technology and medicine came out of that. You know, the point is we all played a part. We all should benefit from this tremendous productivity in this country, but instead of just giving it to a small portion of people.
Amen. Paul Buchheit, his new book is Disposable Americans, and Paul is one of the most brilliant writers working in America today. Paul, I love your work. Thanks so much for being on the program with us today.
Thank you very much, Tom.
And we'll be back with your calls and more of the news of the day right after this.